Amazon has been developing an MMO for more than 3 years called New World, a PvP-focused MMORPG that removes the traditional class systems of MMOs in favor of a little more player diversity in their loadouts. But why should you care? Let's get right into that now. So what is New World? The game takes place on Eternum, an island with mysterious source of power, granting its inhabitants with eternal life. There are many pre-existing factions that already inhabit the land, and these will be the focus of the story, world building, and players' PvE events. But honestly, I think the more exciting and interesting topic to talk about is the game's PvP and player-oriented world. So the PvP is worldwide, but only if you opt in. So don't worry, you're not going to load in from the very beginning of the game and get killed by a high-level player. To join the PvP, you actually have to be level 10, and you have to join a guild. From there, you have to actually flag yourself as a PvP participant. But why should you even do that? Well, by being flagged, you actually get some bonuses. Sure, you're at risk to dying to other players, but you gain more XP and potentially better loot. I like the system a lot. It's high risk, high reward. Honestly incentivizes people to really try to interact with the other players. Another really exciting aspect of the PvP is the 50v50 wars between guilds. So each guild can participate to battle over territories against other guilds, making a dynamic conflict and honestly a lot of incentive to even participate in this. But it's a little bit hard for you to really grasp what it really means to do these battles until I actually address what the territories are and what they mean. So that has to mean that we lead into talking about the player-built world. So guilds that own territories manage what happens within it. They're the ones that get the resources, the income, they're the ones that decide where the buildings are, the layout of the territory. They set the tax rates for their inhabitants, and there might be possibly more details to come, but they haven't really said it yet. So this is what you're going to be battling over for those 50v50 battles. Whoever wins in that battle gets to claim that territory. So if you defend it, you get to still rule over it. If you win, you get to claim that territory. Another cool aspect of the world in this game, though, is that the economy is 100% determined by the players. Meaning that, as far as I understand, you will not be dealing with NPCs for shopkeepers. You're going to be buying items and equipment off of other players, meaning that you can barter, trade, do whatever you want with that. It doesn't have to be in-game currency. It can be doing a task for somebody. It can be trading equipment for equipment. It can actually just be traditionally giving in-game currency and getting rewards back. Plain and simple. But the cool thing about it, though, is the fact that it is all player-based. So there's no parameters of what something is worth unless a player decides what it's worth. It also makes it to where there's going to be competition, giving people that play strictly for crafting or for economy have a viable path to be able to play. I like this a lot. Honestly, the more diversity you can give a community, the more that they seem to stick around and enjoy the game. So I'm all for it. I'm assuming you'll still get rewards from quests that will be equipment, weapons, money, whatever it is. So you can probably ignore a lot of this until endgame probably, and still be able to enjoy the game. I would assume that probably when you get to endgame though, you're going to have to either craft the stuff yourself or you're going to have to buy it from somebody else. That could cause some sort of issues, honestly, but I still think that it's more of an exciting topic and idea more than it's more of a worrisome one as well. That could just be my opinion though. So say that you don't like PvP though, or you like to have more to your gameplay than just PvP. Well, similar to the wars that I mentioned before, there's a large PvE event called the Invasion. So you'll have 50 participants from your guild fend off 8 waves of enemies. The invasions take place at your actual territory that your guild owns. The invasion will actually try to take the territory from you. So it's up to you and your other 49 teammates to be able to take down the invasion. But some of these enemy units will focus on either taking out players or focus on taking down your actual territory, meaning you have to actually watch the battlefield and make sure you're taking care of everything appropriately. So before you actually jump into the invasion, you're given a temporary currency for specifically the invasion. This currency gives you access to a potion shop, siege weapon shop, and also some traps, meaning that you can properly fend off the attackers from the invasion. So the consequence is if you lose this invasion, that's when the corruption actually spreads and takes your inner keep, I believe it's called. Once they do that, you lose. That will actually regress some of the progress inside your territory, meaning that you might have to repair some buildings, build your economy back up, but you do still gain experience from the enemies you killed, and you actually do get some income. So say you win though, then you get a lot more experience and a lot more income. Possibly some other form of currency, but they haven't really said for sure what. So besides this event though, there's obviously still going to be quests and a main story and a lot of other things like that. There's also going to be world bosses, but unfortunately no dungeons. This actually worries me a bit. It's a pretty integral function for MMOs, especially for PvE focused players. So the aforementioned invasions happen every 4 days. What makes me worried is that the PvE players will not be able to have anything to do on those other 3 days. This is a little bit concerning. But honestly, I think they're just going to add dungeons in later. I don't really know how they could really get around it, honestly. But it is always good to see intriguing visuals and interesting enemies when it comes to MMOs, because when things seem repetitive, it can cause a player base to abandon a game. And all that I've seen so far and heard, when it comes to this game, leads me to believe that the world is actually well thought out, the story is not an afterthought, the enemies are diverse, and the visuals themselves are eye-catching. These are all good signs. But I can't bring all this up without discussing the combat. No, this game is not a tab target system. It's real-time action combat, which is so much more appealing to me. The devs constantly refer to the combat as being inspired by Dark Souls, meaning they want it to be challenging, complex, and skill expressive. They want it to have depth, so you don't figure it out in the first 10 minutes, and then you're just playing the same thing over and over again. Also, like I mentioned before, classes are not present in this game, meaning that you're not going to be locked into one path and end up hating it. Instead, you actually level up weapon skills. So pick up a sword and shield, and you're going to start to learn more attributes in that skill tree that'll go towards making you more proficient in sword and shield. But you're not locked into this either. Devs have said you can swap out loadouts on the fly, according to whatever you need for that situation. They've also said that they want players to have the potential to actually be able to max out every single skill tree, so that if you find yourself in a situation where your party doesn't have a mage, you can then be a mage. You don't have to wait for somebody else to join. This is a really exciting concept. So you won't find yourself in a situation where you've put way too much time into your DPS character, but you really need a healer. But there's obviously not enough time for you to just make a healer and figure it out. So either you're going to not be able to get into a game, or you're going to have people really angry at you for playing the wrong type of character. So this game really fixes that. And honestly, it's really exciting. So I do want to be transparent here and say that I've never really loved MMOs. And this is for multiple reasons. I just struggle to get into them. I've played a handful of them to end game, and then promptly dropped the game. They're just typically not my style. What's got me excited about New World, though, is the fact that most of my gripes are not present here. That is, if I'm understanding the vision of the game and it actually turns out as promised. The combat is fleshed out, the story and visuals are interesting, you're not locked into a class that you might hate down the road, there are viable and fun options for both PvE and PvP. While this is not the first game to make these things happen, it's the first MMO that I've discovered that addresses all of these issues and then adds other appealing features that drew me in. I'm honestly just hoping this will be the first MMO to actually hold my attention, because I really do want to like the genre. Now, I think it's important for me to still address the concerns I admittedly have for this game. I want to be brief because this isn't the focus of the video, but I do always intend in all of my videos to be honest and give you guys my full take on subjects that I cover on the channel. So, first issue. The game could be ruined by its players. Honestly, it's really hard to know for sure until we know how much power the players have. But just think, you could have a really dominant territory that holds almost all of the territories, and they do things like jack the taxes up, so then they're only the ones that have the money. Or say that they actually can have access over resources. We don't know if this is for sure a thing or not. But then they have a monopoly over a certain type of resource, and they're stingy about it and don't sell it out without way overpriced fees. I could just see that honestly, if people play it too far and get too power hungry, they could make the game unfun for other people. I'm at least glad though that the devs made the decision to make PvP in the open world opt-in, because originally they didn't do that. And people in the closed alpha they already had were just killing off new players right away. So I mean, it's already kind of shown that people kind of have these tendencies to kind of be terrible. So I'm just hoping they have some sort of failsafe to make sure that it won't just continue to be that way. Another concern is the game might rely too much on the players to make the fun. This is something that we saw in Fallout 76 a couple years ago. Now, I know this is kind of a drastic comparison, but it is still an online service game. It's player focused, not really too emphasized by the NPCs. Like I said, it's not exactly the same scenario, but I'm hoping they're not just relying on most of the players to make the fun. Say they don't have enough quests or enough material for people to actually be able to consistently have fun and the world is just empty. But then they just thought that it was fine because players will just kind of do the rest. This is a really bad mentality, and I just really hope that they aren't thinking this. There hasn't been a lot to suggest that they are, but it is definitely a concern when it comes to a game like this. I just hope that I'm super way off base and wrong on this one, but still a concern. So one that's kind of similar to that, at least in the form of not having the content, is the whole no dungeons thing that I brought up earlier. Honestly, I really don't know what they're thinking by not adding dungeons. Like I said, PvE players, people that just don't want to have PvP in their game whatsoever, what are they going to do when they can't do invasions? They're gonna run out of quests. Dungeons are usually what hold people over when they focus on PvE. Honestly, something I didn't mention either, the invasion mode is 50 players, but the way that it works is the guild leader appoints 10 players themselves, and then the other 40 players that get to participate are randomly picked from a list of people that opted into the invasion from the guild. So say that PvE player is waiting the entire time to get into this invasion, and then they're not randomly selected. We have no idea how many rotations they're going to have to wait to actually be selected. That could cause a huge problem. I think it honestly wouldn't be that bad though if there's other things for those PvE players to do in endgame. So I really, honestly, like I said, I think they'll just have to introduce them later on. It kind of sucks that they're not doing it right now, but it's the only solution that I really see happening if they want to keep the PvE player base. Last concern though, combat might become stale or meta heavy. Honestly, it's pretty hard to really know for sure what the combat's going to be like and how much depth it has until we start playing it, so I'm going to kind of write off the fact that it might get stale, because we don't know, and we can't know until we play it. But that doesn't mean that we can't have meta heavy environments. Without a doubt, people are going to find out what is strongest, and they're going to abuse that. Now, this could not be that big of a problem, as long as the devs are actually on top of everything, and they make sure to update the game with patches that change the balance on what's strong, what's weak. Because I mean, say that magic is super overpowered when we first start the game, and then it's never really touched for a long time, then almost everybody is going to be using magic. That's just the way these games work. And it'll be super frustrating for all the people that really want to use bows, or really want to use sword and shield, but they're just constantly getting decimated by people using magic. Just an example, that could really be any other weapon style. But I think you get my point, and I think you can see why it could be a problem. But I really hope they intend to really be on top of this and just make sure they're constantly shaking things up. Honestly though, Amazon is making its debut in the gaming industry with New World. They can't afford to have this game flop. At least not if they want to stick around and make any sort of revenue in this market. They have the budget, they have the resources, they can make this work. So I really think that we need to hold them to really high expectations. Overall, I think if this game succeeds though, it could really be one of the more dominant games on the market right now. And I think it will attract a large player base. Just imagining large-scale 50v50 fantasy battles and 50-player cooperative battles against corrupted monstrosities sounds amazing. Also, giving players control to dictate the way the world runs and moves forward is a really exciting concept. And honestly, that is why I think you should care about Amazon's New World. So that's going to wrap up this video, everyone. So let me know which features are getting you the most excited for New World. Comment that down below. Also, don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe while you're there. So thanks everyone for being here, watching it all the way through, and I'll see you in the next one.